Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today is 15th of January, and my dear friends and subscribers, I'd like to devote this session, this edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics to President Trump. In less than a week, there will be 1 year since President Trump took office. And I think it's time to have a look at his accomplishments and most importantly at the challenges that he had faced when he took office and the goals that he had set himself. And many of us know that one of the most important challenges that he put himself in a slogan, "Make America Great Again." The key word here is again. Again means that America isn't as great as it was, as great that Trump wants it to be. And so this challenge primarily focused on bringing American production, bringing American industry back to the United States. And from here comes this policy of America first. Now, when we summarize and discuss his achievements and his challenges over a year in office, we can focus on various things. His domestic agenda, his immigration policy, which is widely known, failures and achievements in that field. We also can focus on his foreign policy, his desire to fight the globalists and to reverse the trends that are so contrary to his ideas of propriety in Europe, with the immigration limitations and the freedom of speech, all these things, the waste of money on NATO, the loafers in the European Union, the waste of money on Ukraine, and all kinds of issues that I have been discussing in many of my videos over time. But today I want to focus on economy, and most importantly on whether he has been able to bring American jobs back to America, to bring manufacturing back to America, if there's any progress in this most crucial area. And what I'd like to do today is to focus on some raw economic data. Data that I have collected from various official United States sources. The CIA yearbook and various departments and statistics is very, very good in the United States. You could get just about anything easily in terms of statistical output. But the impression one could have is a basis for conclusions that you, my dear friends, can do yourself. My job here, my task, is to lay out the important economic indicators and see whether there has been any change and any progress on this front by President Trump in the last year. So, the one last word on foreign policy is that America has been portrayed as a kind of a fortress America, where there's a consolidation of American power in the Western Hemisphere, precisely because the United States faces such a huge challenge from China. And in that context, one can understand Trump's desire to get Venezuelan oil, for example, that would supposedly strengthen U.S. resources base, and his desire to grab Greenland, which has presumably rare earth minerals. In other words, all these are part of a much bigger picture that boils down to essentially American capacity to compete with China. So that brings me to the core of today's presentation, and I will show you some of the slides as I speak, but the core of it is the data as to where we were when Trump started and what has changed since in just a single year, and whether that is an indicator of things to come and the trends that can change the situation. So let me look at the key economic indicators of the most important parts of economic activity between China, comparison between China and the United States. I start with robotics, and that is obviously the most important area of activity because it is in robotics, in the capacity to introduce new technologies and raise the productivity of labor through robots, that the future holds its advantages. So, as of today, China has the world's highest adoption of robotics. 50% of all robots sold in the world are in China. That is an extraordinary achievement because that was not the case 10 years ago, and there were none 20 years ago. So the fact that the Chinese are introducing robots at this rate is very important and indicative. Chips. China produces 30 to 33% of global wafer capacity overall and dominated foundation mature node logic chips at 33%. Now these are specific terms that basically mean that the volume of chip production, the Chinese are the leaders, but the United States still holds an advantage in a more sophisticated and more advanced chips, especially their design and invention compared to the production. But still, the United States is far behind. It is at 10 to 12% global production of chips. Now, let's look at the cars, the automobiles of various kinds, which the United States was a total world leader just a few years ago. In 1925, production of cars in China reached a record of 31 million units and almost 13 million of those are new energy vehicles, which is electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, fuel cell vehicles, and so on. That means that is an equivalent of 33% of world global output. That means that it's a third. The United States is producing 10.5 million units a year, which amounts to 10% of world production. So in car manufacturing, the Chinese have overtaken the capacity of the United States. Now about the structure of the GDP of both countries. Now the United States is bigger. It is more than 30 trillion. The Chinese are less than 20 trillion. However, the important thing here is that 38% of the Chinese the gross domestic product, GDP, is coming from manufacturing and 55% from the services. In the United States, it's in reverse and considerably so, whereas only 11% comes from manufacturing and 88% come from services, which means that if American lawyers and doctors make a lot of money and the papers go from one table to another, and these are services that make 88% of the GDP, that does not mean the United States is equally economically powerful as its rivals. What matters is the production in the real sphere of output, which is manufacturing. Now, in steel, which is measured in million of metric tons, MT, China produced 950 to 1,000 million metric tons. and that means that this is an equivalent of 54% of global production of steel. The United States produced 78 or 80 million metric tons, which is only 4 or 5% of global production, which also means that China produces 10 times more steel than the United States. Now, if we go to rail, this is also an indicator of a modern economy, and in this regard, the Chinese have completely beaten the United States in that they produced 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail over the last 10 years, and the United States has none. It has not built any speed rail at all. Now, in terms of agriculture and wheat, this is something surprising because the United States used to be the leader in wheat production in the world, and now the official statistics show that Chinese farmers grow 3 times as much wheat as the United States. Even more alarming is the situation in shipbuilding. According to Pentagon analysis, China's current capacity is a staggering 232 times greater than that of the United States. So shipbuilding is in big trouble in America. Now, if we consult the aggregate economic statistics provided in the CIA World Fact Book, we find that the total size of China's real productive economy is already more than 3 times larger than that of the United States, and the gap is growing. Now, all of this, of course, my dear friends, was the case last year as well. So this is not something that one could blame President Trump for. These sad for Americans economic realities have been building over decades. And in that sense, this is, of course, a challenge for President Trump that he knew he had to face. So when we measure the success or lack thereof, one has to start that these were the facts at the beginning. From that point of view, it's very interesting to see how things have changed in the past year. And here indeed, President Trump has something to show. The trade deficit between the United States and China has been approximately 300 billion, with slight variation, 270 billion a year before and 280 a year before and 300 in 2017. It just basically was the same thing over many, many years, both under under Trump and Biden. Now, what is drastically changed is that this year the deficit has been halved, and it is standing at 150 rather than 300 billion. So this is a great achievement. One could say President Trump managed to halve the trade deficit with China in just 1 year. That's, of course, a big step, perhaps in the right direction. Now, if we look at it more attentively, this is what it goes to show. United States exports to China declined by 38%. The global supply chains, however, were restructured, and manufacturers diverted their production to Indonesia. U.S. imports rose by 34%. Thailand rose by 28%. And so on it goes to other countries in Southeast Asia, Mexico, and others. Now, the key fact that goes to indicate not necessarily a very successful move is that these manufacturers have not come back to the United States, have not. So if the goal was by the use of tariffs to bring back production to America, this has not happened. It happened just a little bit in a sense that U.S. manufacturing did grow a little bit, at standing at 1.7% for the year 2025. So something positive is beginning to happen, but a worrisome fact is that when the American manufacturers are leaving China, they're not coming back to the States, but they're going to neighborhood countries in Asia where production still remains cheaper and more efficient than coming back to the United States. Now, the Chinese made some adjustments, and quite well, and they diverted some of the output to other countries in Europe, in America, in Latin America, and Africa, and so on. But this is none of our concern. My big question, of course, been whether President Trump has been successful. And the answer is partially so. In other words, if you want to be an optimist, you could say Trump has made the first steps. And if it continues along these lines, there is a glimmer of a hope that the United States can bring production back and compete successfully with China. Now, on the other hand, one could say that the first steps are made, but that's not enough. Because in order to make production more attractive and profitable in the United States, one has to do a lot more, and things that have not been done at all. And that means to decrease military expenditure, to lower the interest rates and increase production, and hold in check the wages, and encourage innovation in much more dramatic ways than it has been done so far. And that includes good universities, attractive jobs for young people, etc., etc. So I am not going to go into these details, but let me conclude this presentation with the following. Then 2025 US tariffs did not dramatically help increase manufacturing in the United States. They did, but somewhat. The gap between China and the United States under Trump has not diminished. The gap continues to grow in favor of China, although at a reduced rate. Trump managed to reduce the trade deficit. He reduced it dramatically, and that could be seen as the first step in the right direction. Trump is, if you want to be an optimist, on the right track in economic competition, but much, much more remains to be done. Thank you very much, and I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, to write your wonderful comments. I try to answer all of them. And of course, read my other playlists, read my book, and listen to my other playlists. And I will see you very soon in another edition. Bye-bye.